I'm back in Plenary Session in Z-Dog Studios. I'm joined by Zubin Damania. Zubin, it's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to loan you my capital investment of high-grade audio gear. So it's great to be here, Vinay.
I'd say your studio is a little bit nicer than my studio. It's a bit more run down, but we use the same microphone, so I'm at your level there.
You convinced me to get this microphone. I had a really crappy lower-end microphone, and so thank you. I learned a lot listening to your podcast, especially about the tech to make podcasts and how to make it sound really good.
I do like good sound. Well, listen, our time is very short because we ran it out on something fun we were having a minute ago. But I had a lot of questions for you, and I really appreciate you doing this. Listeners of my podcast, I don't know if you know, Zubin Damania, Z-Dog MD. He's a doctor, a hospitalist, a Stanford graduate, a UCSF graduate before that, who has created a brand, Z-Dog MD, which does a lot of wonderful things. One, thoughtful podcast with lots of guests on so many diverse issues in healthcare. Two, music videos, humorous, funny music videos. I think most people may know you because they've probably seen your music video. They just didn't know it was you behind the scenes. So I think people should check that out. I guess I've been so curious about your path in medicine. And on prior episodes, we talked a little bit, and I know you're from California, from rural California, and then you did your training here. Were you always a musical guy? When did you get into music? How do you what instruments do you play? I mean, what's your musical background?
It's really funny because I grew up in Clovis, California. It's a little conservative farming town, and it's like one of the most conservative places in California. And so I was the big rebel. I was like the liberal kid, but then I went to UC Berkeley, and by the way, I was like the most conservative kid there. It was crazy. But when I was young, I was a chubby little kid because my mom, she's Parsi, which is like an Iranian sub-minority in India, and the way she showed love was you ate a lot of food. Oh, yeah. And so I was a chubby little kid, a little gut, running around, funny last name, weird New Jersey accent because I was born in New Jersey, moved to So to keep myself safe from pretty much everybody, I would use humor and kind of be a performer to try to disarm people. And so that was an early thing for me. And I got into music early on by listening to just a ton of 80s music when I was growing up in the 80s. And so I loved pop music and I loved trying to sing it, and I was a terrible singer and no formal training, but I would tell people even in elementary school, like, I'm going to be a famous pop star when I grow up. Like, that's my thing. And you would see, I actually have this like fourth grade yearbook from Dry Creek Elementary in Clovis, California. And people were saying, good luck with your music career and stuff like that. I mean, this was fourth grade. And so, but it was insane, right? So then I went to, in high school trying to find my thing because I didn't do sports and all that. I was like, well, I'll pick up guitar. I'll try to learn how to do this instrument. I played clarinet in the marching band, which was like chick poison. Like why would you do that?
Like clarinet.
It was the worst. And the reason it was clarinet, parents are from India. What's the cheapest instrument to rent? And it was the clarinet.
Of course.
I was like, I want to play the sax, Dad, because it's the 80s. Yeah. No, I had the clarinet. So I learned a little music, how to read music and stuff doing clarinet, but then I played guitar, got pretty good at guitar because I would practice 8-10 hours a day because I was that guy, right?
See,
the gunner. And got into UC Berkeley, did a minor in music. And
so this was before you went to college. You were already sort of playing guitar as a teenager. Okay.
And again, I had this delusional idea that I was going to be some famous rock star.
Yeah.
And it's pure delusion because my level of talent is low, but my level of diligence at the time was high. So I could fool myself into thinking, nowadays, like any kid is a better guitarist than I would ever be. And so I went to UC Berkeley and I did a minor in music, but I decided I wanted to be a doctor for a bunch of reasons, a long path, but so I hedged by doing music and learned ethnomusicology. So it was like Javanese gamelan and the music of the Caribbean, understanding how culture influenced music. And that then formed this interesting background where I had a little bit of musical training. I never really sung. I understood like the cultural and ethnomusicology aspects and some music theory. And that's kind of what formed the background of music. So then when I went through all the medical training, I let all that fall away because, you're so busy. Course. And then roundabout middle burnout period at Stanford as a hospitalist, I was like, I'm going to make some parody music videos just because I want to. This is who I am. And so I had to relearn and I had to take like voice lessons eventually and all this other stuff just to be able to do some of these parodies.
How many years had you been practicing when you started to make the parody videos?
So it would have been about 2010, and I'd probably been a practicing doc for at least 8 years.
8 years as a
Yeah.
hospitalist at Stanford.
Yeah.
And you refer to it, you say burnout. And a lot of people who do hospitalist medicine confide in me that is a common feature. In your case, how did it manifest, and what were the sort of, I think, what do you attribute as the drivers for it?
Yeah. So, the first 5 years of my career at Stanford, it was really what I call Health 3.0. Really, it was there. It was. I was part of a multi-specialty group called Palo Alto Medical Foundation. They were bought out by Sutter, but Sutter hadn't influenced
Not yet,
the
yeah.
practice yet. So it was still a partnership where it was a group of physicians who got together to try to do the right things for patients and generated revenue by doing that. And it was a fee-for-service world. So they hired us as hospitalists to keep our patients safe at Stanford and to liaise, really, to form that liaison with the primary care physician in a seamless way. So we were hospitalists, we were academic faculty at Stanford, we had house staff, but we were also community physicians. So it was this perfect blend of mentorship, teaching, having house staff, having a team, and being part of something bigger than you, which was this group that cared about doing the right things for patients. So we were accountable to our patients. We were accountable to ourselves. We were salaried, so we didn't worry about throughput.
Sure.
We had a low census so that maybe we had 10 patients, which is unheard of for a hospital.
Amazing.
So we could spend half an hour or an hour with each patient sitting there and holding the hand. And we had a team to help us, the social workers, the case managers, everyone at Stanford were great, and the house staff. So it was beautiful because then they made us do 2 half days of outpatient clinic. And that kept us connected. We hate clinic. We're hospitals. But it kept us connected to who it was we were teamed with. So you were there with the family practice docs. I'm an internist. I learned some family medicine. And I learned what happens to my patients when they get discharged. And so it was beautiful. I would write in this diary, I have the best job in the world. I get paid to do the right thing for patients. I have these wonderful teammates. And to watch that ripped away slowly but surely, like 1,000 paper cuts. As census grew, we became a corporation. Sutter influenced more and more and more into throughput. The EHR goes live and becomes more of a overwhelming weight. The house staff get pulled away because of work hour restrictions and changing sensibilities around shift work and things like that. Increasingly, we're subspecialized and separated off from the rest of the clinic so that you don't know these people anymore as much. And it became then what everybody says, which is I'm a cog in a machine that's broken. There's a moral injury where you have to make money for the machine, but you're trying to do the right thing for your patient.
Sure.
And at that point, that's when I was like, I told my wife, I'm like, I can't last another 10 years. This is not going to work. I don't know what to do. I really don't. And spiraled into depression and all of that. Yeah.
Wow. And so your lifeline was going back to your roots, to music, and starting this. And what were the first kind of videos you put out there? When did you get the Z-Dog moniker? And when did it start to take off?
Well, so people used to call me Z-Dog in like the 90s because I was like a big Snoop Dogg fan.
Oh, of course.
And they're like, hey, what's up, Z-Dog? And I'm like, 2 G's, right? Not this AWG garbage, right? And so what had happened, I mean, it's a long story, but to shorten it, it was basically this, that I had this existential middle-age crisis at age 35 where I was like, I had a kid, my second kid was coming. I was like, who am I as a person? Like, this job is not who I am. So who am I? Well, I'm a teacher. I've always taught MCAT. I've always loved to teach. I did this graduation speech at UCSF that I put on YouTube as a joke and it went viral. And I was like, maybe that's who I am, as a communicator. I like music. I should do music. Maybe I should just, YouTube's a thing. I'll just start putting stuff out there. And I'll be honest, like, I've told this story a little bit. I knew, like, in my heart, I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to do. I don't know how it's going to manifest. There's no way, but I just know I have to do this. And so I did it while being a full-time hospitalist. And that experience then informed the kind of stuff I did. Like, I did a song called Hard Doc's Life, which was about being a hospitalist. It was a hospitalist anthem, standing on the unit rounding, this chart's so thick. I forget what all the lyrics were, but it was all that experience. And then I found that it got traction with people that were suffering like I was. And so the next thing you know, one thing leads to another.
And did you start by posting them on YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube was the thing. There wasn't Facebook. I was like, this is for old people. I'm not going to do Facebook. It still is. And but ultimately I found Facebook to be the platform that's most socially lubricated to share native video, but YouTube was where it started. And you know, you have the graduation speech, then you had like these music videos that did really well. And I was like, who am I teaching here? Am I teaching patience? And then I realized, no, it's not really that. It's my fellow healthcare professionals, and not just doctors. Like, who's really undervalued here? Nurses, respiratory therapists, dietitians, like everybody else in the spectrum.
And maybe it's not only teaching and education, but also sort of spiritual catharsis kind of thing, relief. I mean, I think a lot of people, you know, I know a lot of people in my life, and I've watched some of your videos, and I find them, they put a smile on your face, you know, and it's sort of like, not many people often articulate those little things about our day that kind of, you know, rub us the wrong way or we like, you know? And then when you watch a music video where you've kind of distillated that and you're like, oh, he's got it, he's nailed it. Like, that's what it's like to do it. And it's a bit of a relief for people who feel the sort of stress.
That was the sort of flow state I would get into.
Yeah.
It was almost a spiritual thing. Like, here is all my suffering. I'm going to communalize it because I know you're suffering too. So this idea of communalization of pain, and I'm going to take that pain in these little 1,000 paper cuts, like, oh, you know, this patient treated us like this, or the administrator treated, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I have to click this box. I screwed this up. Readmission was a good example, a song that I did about bounce backs. Because for a hospitalist, that's the worst. When someone bounces back, it's like, I failed as a human.
And what music did you use for that? R. Kelly Ignition?
It was R. Kelly Ignition.
Yeah.
And it's just one of my friends had been like, oh man, I love this song. I forgot about this song. You know, it's my remix to Admission. And I was like, oh, that's like readmission. That's all I heard. And you write the lyrics, and then you're like, I don't know if anyone's going to watch this. And it goes super viral. And you realize it's because everyone's like, that's it. That's what it is. And I realized that I'm like, there's something to that. We don't allow each other to express our communal suffering in a way that allows catharsis. So maybe if I do nothing but that, that's a thing. And so that was a big focus, especially early on, of what we were doing.
People like Weird Al Yankovic. Do you think of him in any way, or you're
The guy's the gold standard.
He's the gold standard.
Yeah, he is just a genius. And the thing is, what Al does, and we've never connected directly, and I would love to, but he just is so brilliant at taking an idea and making it so funny and perfect and fitting that song, and then performing with a musicality that does it justice. Yeah. You see a ton of parodies, you know, med students doing stuff, and the musicality is terrible, and you're like, well, it's distracting, right? He brought this A game. Yeah. So I would always look at that and go, well, what if we had a message associated with that? So over time, we really focused, because that's the other thing is, for example, let's say respiratory therapists, undervalued to the extreme.
Of course.
I would get tons of messages. Man, you've done videos for these guys and nurses and these guys. How about us? I'm like, all right. How about this? Nate Dogg and Warren G regulate, but make it ventilate. And I will do a world-class job rapping that, because I have a team, like my musical producer can make it sound dope. And we did it. And you have this gangster rap anthem about proning patients, about getting these Q1 hour duoneb orders that are BS and all this other stuff. Sure. And you give it to them, and they have this thing that, oh my gosh, somebody made me this thing, right? And it's such a joy, because then they're just like, hell yeah, finally.
You know, it's funny, you say that at the gold standard. You know, I'm from Northwest Indiana. I did my high school there, and there's an Amish community close by in Napanee, and they have, you know, you can go and have like Amish dinner and stuff. And I remember when Weird Al had his Amish Paradise. Yeah. And you know, he was. I guess I'm not in the Amish community, so I don't know how people would feel and if they felt in any way hurt by it. But I felt like he also had a bit of affinity for, I mean, it wasn't like making fun. It was like trying to see the purity and the good in what the Amish community does. And I've always had sort of a very fond place in my heart for those people.
He made that video. That's exactly what it is. It was done with love.
It was done with love.
It was done with love. And you could watch it, and it's funny and it's hilarious, and he nails it. And then you're like, but he loves these people.
Yeah, it's not an insult.
It's not an insult, yeah.
And I think the same is true about, I mean, I think you do a good job about, you know, respiratory techs. I mean, healthcare has become this very complex thing where there's so many parts to it. If you ask the average person what's a respiratory tech, they may not even know what that is, but it's an important job. And it's a job where, you know, I think people who do it well, they take a lot of pride in it. And we respect that as doctors too. I mean, how often do I see like the respiratory tech I really like to work with or something like that when I was working in the unit? And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, yes.
Thank God.
Thank God. Yeah. I feel like so good. I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
my patients are in good hands and I'm going to get like really good help. And that's, and so I think it's, people probably really appreciate that you are sort of capturing their experience and validating it to some degree.
And you know what? They pay it forward. You know, either they subscribe to the show or they do something even better, which is I shoot a video at San Mateo County Hospital over here, and I need extras. So they put out a call. Who's going to come on a Saturday during a pandemic to shoot a video waiting on the world to change, celebrating healthcare professionals? Every single person in their respiratory department showed up. Wow. Yeah, they were the majority of the video. And when they asked them why would you come on a Saturday? And they go, because we love what you did for RTs in that video, Ventilate. And I'm like, you know, that video was, again, you don't get money for the video. You can't monetize a music video. And it comes back in these karmic ways. They want to support this kind of movement, you know, which is beautiful to see.
Is your, I mean, if you weren't doing videos, what genre of music do you listen to? Were you grew up on rap? You grew up on classic rock? What did you grow up on?
Man, I was like a big prog rock guy. So I was listening to Rush and Yes. And,
really?
Yeah, weird, right? And you know, guitar gods like Joe Satriani, Eric Johnson, Steve Vai. You know,
so that type of guitar,
thing,
not like Stevie Ray Vaughan, Hendrix.
So what's weird is when I was young, I thought Stevie Ray Vaughan and Hendrix were inaccessible to me. It just was all emotion and no technique to my ear. Now I look back and go, those are the guys that are the musicians. Like those guys were just feeling it. They were a conduit, it's like a hole in the universe.
That's how I feel. I feel like Vai is like technically brilliant, but Vaughn is like, he puts his soul there, man.
And that's how I feel now.
Yeah,
and it took me some age and wisdom to see that, because at the time I was focused on the technical aspects of guitar. And you know, this is something that's just come to me recently. I was listening to this book called Free Play it was Audible, one of Audible's free books that you get when you subscribe. And it was talking, it melds the sort of spiritual, mystical aspects of improvisation with ideas on how to improvise, music, comedy, whatever it is. And I realized listening to it, that's why I love doing music. That's why I love doing live Facebook talks or YouTube talks. And I love live because you open yourself up, you lose your sense of self, and you're a conduit for the unconscious. And allowing it to happen in the moment, that's why I love the technical aspects of guitar, because you could technically learn all these scales and patterns and how to go fast, then put on a backing set of chords and just improvise the hell out of it. And when you get in a flow state, I would do it in college occasionally, people would just be like, holy shit, like what just happened? And I'm like, I can't reproduce that. That was like, I can't describe what just happened. I wasn't me.
It's like a Grateful Dead concert.
It is. Fish or the Grateful Dead, something like that. Yeah. And so now I try more and more to access that in interviews, and when I'm doing, like even now, like this is improvisation for us.
Of course, yeah. We didn't script this. No, that's so interesting to me. At so many levels. I mean, one, I think you're really right, and about like live music, and particularly people who do improvise in their performances, and that's why, you know, for like many of the bands who get great draws, it's that the 12-minute, you know, improvisational musical solos and things like that people really love. And then the other thing I was curious about is, you know, how do you feel the difference is between being a live performer on stage? You know, now we're COVID, so you're all doing it through a computer,
right?
You feed off the crowd. You like to have a live audience. How do you think about that?
No, these are good questions, man. And gets to the heart of the craft. The thing I loved about live performances, standing on that stage, maybe, you know, and it ranges, right? So I did a gig at the LA Convention Center, 10,000 emergency nurses in the audience, and they're fans. Like I couldn't get from one end of the hall to the other walking without just being mobbed. The guy at the airport. So I was at Wolfgang Puck's pizza restaurant in the airport going home after this thing, and the next day, and I was mobbed by people getting on the plane. Every single nurse was like, want to do a selfie, want to say thank you, and the guy who was the waiter there was like, hey man, like I see a lot of celebrities come through here. I've never seen anything like what's happening to you. Like what's going on? And I'm like, get on the good side of nurses, bro. They'll take care of you.
True.
But that being in the moment in an improvised way on a stage, even if you have prepared material, in other words, you know your slides and all that, there's a flow state that happens. There's an improvisation that happens where you are synchronized with that audience in a way that is so indescribable and it's joyful. And I would pay people to do it, right? And they're paying me to do it.
Right.
And now you do it by Zoom and the joy is sucked out of it.
Oh my
so now
God.
what I do by Zoom, when I do a Zoom talk, and I have quite a few scheduled, is I improvise it entirely. There's no slides. I just get there and I go, okay, guys, I know who this audience is. Let's just get into this. And that has its own beauty, but man, it's a different vibe.
Oh, that's you put it so well. I mean, I guess I've never done what you do, obviously, because I've never done like a musical performance in front of. Oh, that's not true.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my darling. Hello, my ragtime gal.
There's once
you got to tell us. You got to tell us.
A couple of talent shows or something when in med school.
Nice.
I used to play guitar, and I used to write like original songs, a little bit. Actually, maybe like if you're like this, it's like the tiny fraction, but like that's the same kind of thing. I mean, I just had one humorous one many years ago, but anyway, but but that's not what I do for like a living, of course. But I do give a lot of lectures, a lot of lectures in front of live audiences, and one of the things I do in the live lecture is the topics are often controversial, and I know my audience doesn't like my topic, or at least their preconceived notion is that I'm not going to like this guy. For instance, I'm going to go to an oncology audience and talk about how the drug approvals are often bad or conflict of interest is a problem, things that they probably prima facie view the other way. And I spend a lot of time thinking beforehand about how do you actually move someone on an issue, which we kind of talked about in our thing. It's different than like when you start with the premise that the person disagrees with you and you want to bring them on your side by the end of it. And that's part of what my goal is to change their mind. The other part of the goal is I want to entertain this person. Like I want them to say, even if I hate like VP's guts, I hate everything he said, I'm glad I sat there for an hour because, he entertained me. I wasn't bored. And I personally hate to be in a lecture that's boring.
Yeah.
And there's something that happens, I think, when you're giving a lecture. I think I always start like maybe sometimes I intentionally stumble in the beginning to make seem like I don't know what I'm doing. Stumble, have some hiccups or something, and then as you going, you feel like you're getting their attention. Like at least I feel in a lecture, I'm like, okay, now they're really paying attention, really paying attention, really paying attention, and then you start to feel the audience, and sometimes in a moment where, as you put it, you're in the flow of your lecture or whatever you're doing on stage. You feel like you got all their attention, and I really have it, and then as you say something, sometimes you feel up there like I can feel how they're feeling about what I'm saying, and I can tweak it just a little bit, soften it when I need to soften, or harden it up and come in really on the hard end of the issue, right? And I feel as if like as a speaker, I'm in tune to the audience on that. And so I wonder if you sometimes feel that it is sort of a give and take, that it's more than just what you wanted to say, that you're reading them and giving them kind of what they want to hear.
Man, what you just said was so on point of the description of the experience of being in that state. And 1,000% yes. In fact, I do some of the same things. So I'll start out with like a really dumb joke that they're just going to be like, this guy's corny as hell.
Yes.
I hate this guy.
Yes.
And you fumble around and you kind of joke about the slides, not whatever it is. And then you start to build it. And I'll tell you, it is an organism that you form. It's a higher instantiation of consciousness. So you have your one conscious agent, their 500, whatever it is, or 2 or 50, however big your audience is. When you start to synchronize around everybody's attention on one idea, you form a higher agent, I think, and you feel it. And so what you're talking about, carving through that slope down the hill on your snowboard, carving around and going, okay, here's an obstacle. Here, I'm going to turn it this way. I'm going to get a little more momentum. I'm going to do that. Is a gifted speaker, because what happens is you see it, you feel it. You can see it and feel it at the same time. And when it hits, like I've had experiences on stage where I'm moved to tears by the amount of attention.
You feel the attention.
You feel it because there's something that you've hit on that's a universal experience. And then it feeds back in the emotion you provide back. And at the end, people are like, I cried during this talk about fucking health 3.0. And you're like, yeah, it wasn't that awesome? And you're still feeling it, in the selfie line. It's a beautiful thing. And I think we have short shrifted people into not saying that that's on offer. Like, that's on offer. Learn to be an amazing speaker. Go out and do the 10,000 hours of it.
You're so right. And, somebody once showed me a video clip, and it was before my time, but it was Freddie Mercury, Wembley Stadium, and he does that improvisational where he sort of belts out some notes.
I've seen it. Yeah.
It's 80,000 people belting it out. He's got everyone's attention in there. And I was like, this guy's got, you don't understand what he's done. He's got 80,000 people's attention, 100% attention. They're not thinking about anything other than what he wants them to think about. And he's getting them to sing because that's how that's how good that guy was, right? And of course, his genre of being on stage is different. I think about all the lectures I attend where as an audience, I feel they don't have my attention. I know they don't. I'm on my phone. And I think like, I feel bad for the speaker.
Yeah.
I feel bad like you don't even know what you're missing. Like you have this rare opportunity. You got all us in the room. We're sitting here. Out of the rules of decorum, we're going to sit here quietly, but we're not going to pay attention to you until you build it. And if you had just really spent a lot of time thinking about what you wanted to say, how you wanted to say it, had a message you wanted to get across and really wanted to persuade us or whatever you want to do up there, I think there are many different goals you can have. It could be to entertain, to delight. It could be to change their mind, to persuade. But you have to think, how do you get them there? Build every step of it. I think you talk about it so nicely that you start to feel it coalesce. You bumble in the beginning. You start to get it. Because if you go in too strong, I think you push people away.
You push people away.
You got to bumble. You got to look like you don't know what you do. But then finally you build it and you get your theme going and you pick it up and then the tempo comes in and then you've got them. And it's a unique opportunity because, we use it for different purposes, perhaps.
Not really.
Maybe they're more similar
not.
than we think, right?
Yeah.
It's just a different method. We want to entertain. I really want to change their mind. That my goal is to I want them to say this drug is shitty at the, that's what
exactly.
I got a goal.
Yeah.
But there's something to that. And that is what I think is dead in Zoom.
Agree. So it's funny because you and I, even now, we're forming a higher conscious agent of two people that are so aligned on this. And you can feel it, right? You can feel that vibe. You don't get that on Zoom. You don't get it. You get blank faces, little squares, or nothing, or no feedback. And so I've done a few of these Zoom talks now, and it is so dispiriting as a performer because all the joy of that gets sucked away, but then you get feedback afterwards. That was the best Zoom talk we've ever had. That was great. And you're like, okay, so the bar is that low.
Yes, it's that low. That's what I noticed. I was like, what are you talking about? That was the best I was like, this is fucking Zoom.
Let's get that. That's why we're in a physical space together, right?
Of course.
And you can do it on the phone. I find that the phone is actually better than Zoom. Because you're so much better tuned into that audio.
Oh, Z-Dog, I love that you said. And I also find that if I have a friend with a really crisp phone signal, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's even better than when you get the friend with the shitty reception. And I'm just like, dude, this is over. Let's not even have this conversation. I can't hear every fifth word you say.
Yeah. Why are we doing this?
Why are we doing this?
Why are we doing this?
Going through the motions. You're spot on. The phone does it. The live audience does it. And that's why when all these people talk their big game about whatever, education is going to go online. We're going to do these modules and it's going to be, you watch a video. Why do you hear someone speak when you can watch a video? I was like, none of you actually understand live talking to people because it's like the video is not the same. It's never going to be the same. It's always going to be shitty. This is the way to do it. It's going to go back to the way it was. You will quickly see and you are all wrong. This is not going to transform. You agree with me? It's going to go back.
Oh man, I feel like I'm in the church of communication. The church of connection. That's really what it is, man. And I've done videos where I'm like, oh, Zoom is a poison and we have Zoom fatigue, but that's just scratching the surface of what it is. Now, here's a question to you. You made a distinction, which I think is so important. A good phone signal and a crappy phone signal. And the way I like to think of this is in the early days of cell phone, it was unusable because you would talk over each other because there was so much delay.
Oh, yes.
And that is poisonous to conversation. It's poisonous to flow state because you don't have the normal give and take. But what if Zoom's technology was so advanced that you had real time, no lag, in the room, 3D virtual goggles on? Do you think that would fix the problem?
Yeah, now you're getting to the thought experiments I think about, which is what if what if you and I are in separate rooms, but it's just like this?
Yeah.
Maybe. But I think maybe that would get at it. Maybe there's something additional that you won't get. I mean, because like I'm not just hearing you talk. I'm seeing you're looking at me.
Subtleties.
Very small things that and probably I can't even articulate all the things I'm seeing because I'm a product of evolution to read you in this way. It's like the number one goal of my survival has been to read people like you and how you feel towards me. You talk about the millisecond lag. On the phone, it's deadly.
Yeah.
International calls, WhatsApp, deadly. On Epic, it's also deadly. Oh. When you're writing a note, and then I'm like, I want to know what the potassium was. Yeah.
I just stood up with my hands in the air. Keep going, please.
You're writing a note, and you're like, oh, what was that MRI image? And I click on the images tab, and then there's that 1 second, maybe 0.8 of 1 second, and I'm like, oh, what's on Twitter? My mind is gone. I'm out of the note. I'm out of the Epic. This fucking Epic and these lags. The people who make these. This is my podcast. I can say how I want to say. People who make these shitty EMRs, they're all shit. They can make a shit EMR because they've written lobbyist bills that forced us to adopt their shitty EMR before it was really good enough to adopt. So they've forced us to do it so they can provide a shit product. If you had Twitter with these millisecond delays of Epic, no one would ever use that product. Facebook, no one would ever use. Everyone who makes in a product that they actually want people to use, make it very responsive because human beings die in those half a second that this stupid software takes to load up whatever you want to see. I hate this Epic experience. It is awful. And no system is perfect. The best is the VA system because it's so bare bones that it's faster at least. That's the only saving grace, so it doesn't bore me to death. But I get bored to death. I lose it. It's like the whole thing is over.
Every fucking thing you just said is like if I could write a Bible about everything that's wrong. You asked me about burnout.
Yeah.
Epic goes live, and then we have remote access. So now I can get the fuck out of the hospital if I finish up seeing my patients, do the in-person stuff that I can't, go home, write my notes. There is a 10, 20, 50 millisecond delay in the VPN to do Epic Notes. So pulling in data, painful. Putting in data, just beyond an eye poke. And you're doing this and you're like, oh, and you're distracted and then you try to articulate it to the Epic, champion. And you're like, well, could you guys do anything about this lag? Oh, that's your internet provider.
Your internet, yeah. I'm sure.
Well, how come there's a slight lag in the hospital too? Well, these are complex systems. Why? The VAs doesn't have a lag, like you said. It's really dumbed down. It's easy, why are we... It was so painful. And you know what I think? I wonder if it's everybody who senses this or if it's just very attuned people to communication like you and I who are like, this is what we do. But I think everybody does. I really do. And they just can't articulate.
They can't articulate. They just hate it. They hate doing notes at home.
Yeah.
A note that should take 5 minutes takes an hour because you've been distracted 4 times because the stupid thing has lag. The people who you complain to, they don't get it. They have no skin in the game. You're forced to use their software that you've paid $1 billion for your health.
Thank you, Judy.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know what to say. I mean, I think it's a huge scam. The thing about the EMR is, first of all, if somebody actually did a study of like, this is me speculating, but I suspect I'd be right. You did a primary care doctor study, and you asked of all the things in the EMR that you could imagine, you could print it all out for a patient, and it'd be like, I don't know, 1,000 pages. What % of those pages has the primary care doctor looked at? And I bet the answer will be like 2.5. On average, I mean, I'm just speculating, but it'll be something like the doctor has looked at 3 pages worth of data in a data collection space of 1,000 pages. Like it's just a fragment of data you look at because it's so cumbersome and slow to look through all the data. In the old days, when we would have the paper chart, I still remember it, you could actually look through hundreds of pages very quickly. Physically, you could look through very quickly. So I think it actually slows how much data we consume. Putting in the data it's just a sea of dot phrases and garbage because typing in data to that thing is such a pain. Being bored by the EMR, it's horrific. People used to complain how hard it was to find the chart. At least once you found it, you didn't have to wait for anything anymore. You got it. Yeah.
It was interesting. Like you
once
flipped through it like a damn book. You were like, wait, what did he have to say? Oh, he wrote his note and it's all scribble, but I can understand it because I'm a doctor too. And this idea that that the EMR changes our cognition
it does.
As clinicians. So even inputting data, it used to be there was a hand, brain, thought synergy when you write notes, which is why even when we had our EHR, I would take all the notes on my patient by hand, and then I would do data entry like a damn clerk at the end of the night when I was on call. And on my hand note, there were these arrows and connections and CHF and then SALT and he's non-compliant and this and that. And then you put it in the thing, assessment, CHF, dot phrase, will continue to follow. Bullshit.
It's bullshit.
But without that cognitive component of writing, I wouldn't have been able to think about the patient correctly, even because our writing and our cognition are so deeply evolved together. It's like you said, like so much stuff is happening under the hood due to millions of years of evolution. I can see you sitting there now in your really cool shirt, which I want, by the way, kind of nodding and tapping your fingers and all this I'm taking in unconsciously instantly and making an assessment of what your internal mental state is, which allows me then to synchronize and understand and feedback. All of that is robbed for us. I say that medicine has an analog heart. And that's what it is.
That's what it is, yeah.
But you can make better digital technology. It's just we're not there. And look, okay, it's been 10 years since I've really done a lot of Epic in a hospital where my life depends on it and I'm billing for it. Nothing has changed. The story you're telling me is exactly the same story that I was feeling 10 years ago.
Yes.
So what does that say?
What does that say?
These assholes aren't incentivized to make it better.
We screwed up because we talked too long earlier. So now I got to walk out of here. I want to pick up this conversation where we left off because there's still more. This is going to be a 2-part interview, Plenary Session. So in the future we're going to talk about we're going to pick up the thread. You started to make the first few music videos. How does this thing take off? We're going to pick up the thread on this EMR and this lag and why it's really tied to burnout. It really is deeply, deeply tied. It used to be the days where doctors, being a doctor was really, really fun. It's still really fun for a lot of it, but it's not as fun as it used to be because people outside of medicine have taken away some of the joys and made it a lot more painful for us.
I want to do a whole show on that if that's okay. Yeah, that would be amazing because you've nailed it. I mean, that's what it is. It sucked the joy out of this, and I still feel it when I go around at UNLV.
Yeah,
still the remote Epic. Yeah.
Z-Dog, pleasure to start. I'm going to put this out and then and we'll talk some more.
What a joy, dude. Yeah. Thank you.